the main event. This is the fight we all want to. This is the fight we've been waiting for, right? Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirer. This is a rematch, but it's a trilogy. So they've already had the rematch, and now they're fighting for the third time. This is going to be a great fight, man. I can't wait for this fight. I'm a big Conor McGregor fan. I'm a Dustin Poirer fan too, but I can't lie. I'm definitely a bigger Conor McGregor fan. I'm rooting for both guys. I'm rooting more for McGregor. I do want him to win because if McGregor wins, the sport wins, right? That's kind of how it works in MMA. If McGregor's still about in MMA, the sport's just going to grow. The sport's going to get bigger, more eyes on the sport. People start talking about pay more. He influences the culture of MMA, right? Now, he's a massively polarizing figure. A lot of people hate Conor. A lot of people love Conor. And that's actually one of the funny things about his fight nights is because lots of people that do a breakdown, because they either love him or hate him, they can't do a rational breakdown. And I did a tweet about that the other day, right? The tweet said something like, I haven't seen one rational take on Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirer. People are either blinded by love or blinded by hate. That's not how you make money, right? And that's not how you make money, right? If you have a loving for Conor McGregor or a hatred for Conor McGregor that is so deep that it clouds your judgment, you shouldn't be betting on this fight. You should just skip the fight, right? Now, the funny thing about that is, and the irony about that is that no one's going to admit or understand if they've got a loving for him that makes them cloud judgment. And no one's going to admit if they've got a hatred for him that makes them cloud judgment, right? Because it's just the ego will protect yourself and will say, no, yeah, I do love Conor McGregor, but I'm still looking at this rationally, right? I think a lot of people aren't, right? Me, because it's my job, I have to look at it rationally. But I still get carried away in fighters I love or fighters I hate. Sometimes I still feel myself going, nah, like I'm rooting for this guy so much. I want to bet on him, right? But I've been in the game for many, many, many years now. And I've made the mistake many, many, many times of betting on someone I love or, betting against someone I don't really like that much, even though there's not many people I don't like, in general in life. So, yeah, I say all of that to say this, is that if you are watching other predictors' videos or if you are listening to other predictors' podcasts or if you are looking on Twitter for some, takes on the Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirer fight, as you are doing watching mine now, I just be very careful because this fight has people polarized and has people emotional and I haven't seen, even though I haven't been looking that much, I haven't seen many takes of people actually looking at it irrationally, right? So just make sure you do your research before listening to anyone, right? Anyway, I'll get into the breakdown now. So I feel like Conor McGregor fought a lot better than he did, or than I thought he did when I rewatched the fight. So, a lot of times what happens when you're studying for MMA is that you will think a fight went a certain way, but when you go back and you watch tape, it actually didn't go that way at all. So coming into this fight, right, like a few months ago, for the last few weeks, few months before I started taping this fight and doing my research, I actually thought that Dustin Poirer kind of bossed the fight against McGregor, bossed the rematch, their last fight. I thought Poirer was kicking his leg, Poirer was kind of countering him, and then he knocked him out. But when I watched the fight a week ago, when I was, researching this fight, it didn't really happen like that. Conor McGregor was doing a lot of damage on the feet. Conor McGregor was actually outboxing Poirer. Now, of course, Poirer countered him a couple of times, but in general, the exchanges on the feet, McGregor was doing better. He won the first round and he was looking comfortable. The fight just kind of switched, man. Obviously, the calf kicks took big damage, but then McGregor, he faded, which he does in almost all of his fights where there's some type of adversity, even going back to the Chad Mendes fight, which he overcame that adversity because he won. But he was gassed in that fight, right? He was gassed. He kept getting taken down. He couldn't stuff the takedown. Then, obviously, in the end, Chad got even more gassed than him, and he was able to stuff the takedown, and he was able to knock him out. But, even going back that far to his interim featherweight title fight, Conor McGregor gassed in that fight, right? And then obviously he knocks out Aldo in 13 seconds. The next fight against Nate Diaz, the most notorious fight in the Notorious's fight career, probably was Nate Diaz won, in my opinion. He, he's got beat for the first time in the UFC. It was absolutely massive. So he gassed in that fight, right? Terribly. But I'm not going to take too much from that because, it was up at 170 pounds, short notice. But you kind of can take a lot from that because it's the same thing that happens in all of his fights, basically. So, gassed in that fight, got stopped. Then he comes back 6 months later. Shout out to Conor. Heart of a lion, comes back against the guy that choked him out. And he gasses against Nate Diaz again in the rematch, right? I believe it was in the third round this time. Nate Diaz is teeing off. He's against the cage. Yeah, he's blocking, but he's absolutely gassed. If there was another minute in that round, who knows what would have happened, right? Now, in the fourth round, he gets a second wind and he comes back and he actually has a good fourth round. He cuts Diaz in that fourth round with a terrible cut. And, then he's able to obviously win the decision via majority decision. So he came through adversity there, but he still got tired, but he was able to come through, right? Which is, we have to give some respect to Conor there, right? So, there's a lot of takes going around. Oh, Conor McGregor can't come through adversity. Any sign of adversity crumbles. That's not true, right? And most of the people saying this, basically all of the people saying this, guys, are people that hate Conor McGregor, right? But then you get people who are also saying, no, he does come through adversity. The ones I've mentioned, Nate Diaz too, Chad Mendes. He's come through adversity. You're talking rubbish. Conor's fine. His gas tank is fine. Bomb, whatever. That is also absolute bollocks, okay? Which means, for some of you, probably not from the UK, it means it's bullshit, right? So it's somewhere in the middle. So yeah, Conor doesn't crumble immediately at the sign of any adversity, but Conor is not someone that does great with adversity, okay? And that's important in this matchup because Dustin Poirer, from what we've seen in the last fight, is probably going to show Conor some adversity, right? Obviously, he showed him in his last fight. And obviously, there's always the possibility that Conor McGregor knocks Dustin Poirer out in round 1 or round 2. But if it gets out of round 1, and if it gets out, even if it gets the midway past round 2, it's very unlikely for me to see Dustin Poirer getting KO'd. And since, after we get to that midway point of round 2, it becomes increasingly more likely that we see McGregor getting KO'd. We've seen Dustin go 5-5s multiple times. We've seen him go against Max Holloway, against arguably someone who pushes the most pace as the fight goes on in the whole of MMA, Max Holloway, and he was able to win that fight, not comfortably, but fairly comfortably. There was no arguments with him winning that fight. Obviously, Dan Hooker, that was an absolutely grueling fight. The only reason Poirier won that fight is because he outlasted him. We've seen him go, deep third round or something with Justin Gaethje, who probably higher than Max Holloway, definitely higher than Max Holloway, pushes a heavier pace. One of the most in the UFC, potentially the most in the UFC. I mean, that guy pushes a crazy pace, and he knocked him out in the end, right? Obviously, Eddie Alvarez, them fights were crazy pace. So, Dustin is tried and tested, We know Dustin can get into the fourth round, almost be knocked out, have nothing left, and still win the fight. We can't say that about McGregor. If this becomes a dogfight, there's only going to be one winner. Now, could McGregor potentially, win a dogfight decision like he did against Nate Diaz? Yeah, but I much more favor Dustin Poirer if it gets to that, right? Look, if someone tells me that this fight's going to get into the fourth round, I'm putting a lot of money on Dustin Poirer. Let's put it that way, right? And if you're going to argue against that, in my opinion, and I think it's a pretty solid opinion, you're blinded by some form of love for Conor McGregor. I don't really see any rational person saying, yeah, they favor Conor McGregor if it gets into the fourth round. I just don't think you can do it. The only way you can say that is if he's won the first 3 rounds, definitely, and you're just hoping he survives round 4 and 5. Now, look, I could still see McGregor there, you know, doing his thing in round 4 and 5. I just think Poirier is going to be doing more, right? Look, bottom line is I don't think the fight's going to get into round 4 and 5. I do think this fight stops by the 3rd round, you know. I do think it probably creeps further than we've seen in the 1st and 2nd fights because both fighters are going to be, well, Conor McGregor specifically will be understanding that, okay, Poirier can hurt me now. You know, I'm going to have to take my time a little bit more. I tried to knock him out. I couldn't knock him out. Is that going to be a good strategy for him? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Would his better strategy just be going even more heavy in the 1st round? Probably not, you know, although there is an argument for that because he did hurt Poirier in that 1st round a couple of times. And look, McGregor could definitely go out and knock Poirier out in the 1st round or in the 2nd round. And as I said, them striking exchanges, I was leaning McGregor. If the fight stopped, right, 5 seconds before McGregor got KO'd, right, if the referee comes in and stops the fight, I know this could never happen, but if it just did, for sake of argument, if the referee stops the fight and then they go to the judges' scorecards, McGregor wins that fight on the judges' scorecards. Now, James, what the hell are you talking about? That's not how fights are scored. I know. I'm just saying that to back up my point, that McGregor was getting the better of the striking exchanges, okay? Just in general, he was. He was faster than Poirier. His reactions were better than Poirier. He seemed to have more power. He did have more power than Poirier. He was knocking Poirier's head back with power jabs. You know, the power was evident in McGregor. But it's the same thing in every McGregor fight. If he doesn't get you out by the 8-minute mark, he starts to struggle, right? He starts to show signs of wear. He starts to show signs of fatigue. And Dustin Poirer is the type of guy who can capitalize on that, right? Dustin Poirer has a lot going into this fight, right? I don't think he's going to overlook McGregor because it wasn't an easy fight. So I don't think he's going to just completely be overlooking him like McGregor may have done in their last fight. But he has a lot going for him in the fact that he knows he can take Conor's power now. I believe going into that 2nd fight, he must have had a lot of, you know, questions on his mind. Can I take McGregor's power? Because the 1st fight, he couldn't take it. McGregor landed a shot. He got KO'd. He had to live with that for the next 6, I think it was 7 years until they had the rematch. He had to live with that for 7 years. Saw Conor became the champion. Saw Conor become the double champion. You know, Conor was probably still in his head all, you know, after all this time. But now he knows, wait there, I can take Conor's power. You know, I got hit clean more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times, and I was able to take the shot every single time. One time, he looked very hurt, which was the shovel uppercut that McGregor hit Poirier on, right? He did look pretty hurt when that happened. But other than that, he was taking his shots pretty clean. Actually, before he got knocked out, he took a clean left hand, and it looked like he didn't even budge him, right? And that was like 5 seconds before he got knocked out. So yeah, I just feel like if this fight gets into the 8-9 minute mark, man, we got to favor Dustin more and more. And for that reason, I have to favor Dustin outright. I can't say McGregor's going to win this fight if I think that his chance of winning it is within the first 10 minutes, let's say. Because how often does he knock him out in the first 10 minutes? He could do it. And could he do it on the weekend, on Saturday? Yeah. But how often does he do that? Potentially not that much. You know, I don't think he does it that much. I don't think he does it to justify being a favorite. I know he's not a favorite anymore, and I agree with that. I don't think McGregor can be favorite here. I mean, what we saw in the last fight, it's ridiculous to call McGregor a favorite, in my opinion. It wasn't just the leg kicks, right? The leg kicks, of course, they were landed, but it's not only the leg kicks. There's so much more that come into effect in this fight, right? And people are just talking about the leg kicks, the leg kicks, the leg kicks. And Conor himself was just leg kicks, leg kicks, leg kicks. I hope he's addressed some other stuff in his game, because if he's only addressed the leg kicks, he's going to be in for a rude awakening, right? Because how about you addressing that Poirier took your best shots? Because he did. And is he going to take them every single time they fight? No, of course not. McGregor has the potential to knock him out. But a massive thing in this fight is that Poirier took McGregor's shots, you know, for the first 8 minutes. And by the way, they wasn't shots that were glancing off him. They were clean shots. And also, by the way, it's not like it was every now and then he would hit him with shots. But Dustin Poirer was kind of bossing it. No, McGregor was winning the fight. He was winning the striking exchanges. But Poirer weathered the storm and knocked him out. So that's a big thing, you know. McGregor has to realize now that Poirer can take his shots. Will he on the weekend? I don't know. But he has to realize that he can. So for that reason, he needs to come in with a more strategic game plan, like he did with Diaz too. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a much more reserved Conor McGregor, like we did see in the Diaz 2 fight, right? I think McGregor's obviously delusional, which you have to be at that level, and to be who he is, he has to be delusional. He still says he can beat Khabib, right? Before the Poirier rematch, he was saying that I will definitely beat Khabib. I'm the person to beat him. He's making like crazy accusations, like he will definitely knock out Khabib. He said Khabib's run away. Khabib's retired because he was coming back. All of this like ridiculously delusional things, right? But you have to be delusional. But I also think, you know, to be where he is, yeah, I genuinely believe you have to be delusional. Like you literally will not get to where McGregor has. I'm not talking about champion. I'm talking about just a superstar he has become. You don't get there unless you're delusional, right? So that's fine. Delusion is not, I'm not using it as in a derogatory term in this regard, but he is delusional. But I also think he's clever enough to, even though he's delusional, he's clever enough to see reality and change his game plan. He did it in a Diaz 1 fight, in a Diaz 2 fight, and I think he's going to do it again here, right? I wouldn't be surprised to see Conor throwing lots of calf kicks. I think we're going to see Conor throw a lot of calf kicks in this fight, right? I think he's going to kind of try and deter Poirer from doing it. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw his stance different than we see in the second fight, right? So I think there's a lot going into this fight that McGregor can change. And that's why it's going to be interesting. And that's why I do lean with the fight going a little bit later. I still think McGregor's going to gas in this fight at some point. And I do ultimately think Dustin will probably take him out. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if there was another outcome. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes later. I'm not predicting it goes to the 4th and 5th rounds, but I wouldn't be dramatically surprised just because of the parallels between this fight and the Diaz 1 fight, right? And then obviously the rematches, we saw how different they went. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I've went around the houses a little bit, but I wanted to do a little bit of a different take than you probably will see from most people out there. And look, maybe it's similar, but yeah, I've tried to be as down the middle as possible. And I think that shows because, as I say, I'm picking Poirier to win this fight, but I'm kind of rooting for McGregor, right? Like, I like McGregor. I want him to win. MMA wins. But just looking at it unbiasedly, you've got to favor the guy that can last, that is proven to be able to last more than 10 minutes and thrive more than 10 minutes. Not just last, right? But thrive more than 10 minutes. We've seen Dustin have 4th and 5th rounds that are amazing. You know, Hooker. And then obviously we've seen McGregor. Yeah, he's got into the 4th and 5th round once or twice against Khabib. He got stopped in the 4th round. And then Diaz, 5th round, he lost that round. So, you know, you've got to favor the guy who can go longer. Because if McGregor doesn't knock him out, then we did go longer, right? So there we go. I think if you're backing McGregor, you're basically backing a 1 to 3rd round KO. Even the 1st and 2nd round KO, you're basically backing. So, but again, I do have to put the caveat there that I think this is a close fight. And I could see McGregor, you know, winning the first couple rounds, it going later, and him squeaking out a decision like he did against Diaz in that second fight. He squeaked out a decision. Whether you like it or not, it was a majority decision. It wasn't a unanimous decision. And some of them rounds were close, you know. So, yeah, man, that's all I got to say about this fight. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you did want to sign up for my service, it's been an absolutely crazy year for us so far. We've won a crazy amount of money. We're up 57.1 units already, and we're not even halfway through July. We haven't even had the first card of July, and we're already up 57 units. Last year, I won 60 units, and that was a dramatic amount of money. Everybody in my membership team was extremely happy with that. I was extremely happy with that, and we've already almost hit 60 units. and we're just halfway through the year. So you can go to my website or my links in my bio, and you'll get full breakdowns and all my official bets. I have currently 7 bets on this card. Obviously, I haven't give out any except for one, which was the O'Malley inside the distance play on this podcast. So if you did want to get all of my breakdowns and my sports betting training courses, go to my website, lucrativemmabetting.com, or just hit the links in the bio. I'll have links to my results page. I'll have a link to my membership page, all of that stuff. Thanks for listening, and I will be back next week.